There are still 8 billion more people to bring into Bitcoin. So we want to be one of the wallets that brings on that next billion people. And by using Liquid and Lightning, we think that we can onboard them into this Bitcoin ecosystem. In 5 to 10 years, I don't think we'll be pricing Bitcoin in terms of other things. It'll just be things are priced in Bitcoin in terms of Satoshis, the smallest unit of Bitcoin. So when you buy a sandwich, it might cost you 5 Satoshis. Well, I think it's really the financial freedom part, but also making the world a better place. If you look at most of the problems in the world, and we as Bitcoiners like to say, Bitcoin fixes this, all of these problems in the world are fixable by Bitcoin because money is the base layer of human civilization. It's what we use to trade and to specialize in different disciplines, like game developer or podcaster or things like that. We couldn't do these things if we're still constantly sustenance farming and producing things for basic needs because we have to produce everything. But because of specialization through trade and using money for trade, we can do all the things that we can do today. So the problem we're facing in the world is that the money is broken. It's been hacked. If you look at money as an operating system, central banks have hacked it. It wasn't supposed to be this way when you have a hard money standard, like say, for example, gold in its most ideal form factor and use case, which is pure gold, and potentially coins made of pure gold. But as you get the clipping of coins or the mixing of impure metals into coins, and then you move into paper money where it's completely segregated from the underlying asset. It's just in God we trust or full faith and credit, no longer backed by anything, then you have a problem. And this is why we have societal ills today where, it seems like everything is on the decline. We're seeing staggering amounts of inflation, even in Western countries. We're seeing people unable to pay their basic bills and to provide for their families. And there's just no way for them to own property, like a house, even remotely.
Mm.
So all of these problems are fixed by Bitcoin adoption because Bitcoin is a return to that hard asset. It's a return to a bearer instrument that you yourself can hold. And that bearer instrument is so critical because when money is no longer a bearer, it's outsourced. And when it's outsourced, the person dealing with it on your behalf can do whatever they want to it. They can rehypothecate, lend it to someone else, but they can corrupt it and, do whatever they want with it at that point. So the bearer instrument aspect of Bitcoin is probably what makes Bitcoin so important. Also the mathematical properties, the finite cap of Bitcoin at 21 million units, and the ability to verify on any computer. But I think the bearer part is probably
Mhm.
the most key thing here.
You are very focused. You think Bitcoin solves everything because it's a bearer instrument, and it takes back control. Um, and the Jan 3 is accelerating hyper-Bitcoinization. So are you working with, is it through private levels or with government? How are you hoping to achieve this?
We look at the opportunity or total addressable market cap for Bitcoin, it's massive. It's trillions and trillions of dollars because we still have billions and billions of people to onboard to Bitcoin, right? We might be at maybe 100+ million adopters, maybe if we're generous,
Hmm.
but there are still 8 billion more people to bring into Bitcoin. So we want to be one of the wallets that brings on that next billion people. And by using Liquid and Lightning, we think that we can onboard them into this Bitcoin ecosystem because they can receive Bitcoin easily, cheaply, and spend it. So we can use Aqua Wallet to jumpstart communities or even entire countries if they want to use this and they want to have a national wallet that's branded with their own branding. It is very easy to use. So Aqua is designed for an average person, and one of our taglines is it's so easy your grandma can use it. So you
Okay.
download from the App Store. We don't force you to back up your seed phrase, the 12 words
Hmm.
immediately. We'll remind you once you get some money into the wallet, but we don't want to create any barriers. So you could just download it and receive money from someone else. And we think this easing of people into the Bitcoin ecosystem is very important because you don't want to front load all the complexity and difficulties like backing things up right away. But once they have a little Bitcoin, then they should be incentivized to learn more. It's all about financial incentives. If you have no money in your wallet, you're less likely to be interested to back up a seed. But once you have it, we'll tell you, well, you should back it up, write it down on a piece of paper, not connected to the internet, and keep it in a safe place. So the goal is to gradually handhold people into the Bitcoin ecosystem. And as they get more and more money, then we'll remind them to do more and more things. When we do have enough funds in their savings account on the Bitcoin main chain, we'll remind them to possibly buy a hardware wallet too. So it's this gradual onboarding process. But I don't think it's difficult for people to back up 12 words.
Mm.
IT security is not something that a lot of people are familiar with, but I don't think it's something that's too hard for someone to learn. If you can drive an automobile, I think you can write down 12 words and keep it in a safe place. I mean, these days you have people making TikTok videos where they're refurbishing, I don't know, a kid's car or something, and they're 3D printing parts for it. And if you can do all of that, I'm pretty sure you can back up 12 words safely
Yeah.
somewhere.
Tell me also, you were saying you work with governments and politicians. You've quite a high profile presence in the work in El Salvador. Tell me how you got involved there and what you were doing.
Well, that just kind of happened. So that was my friend Jack. Jack Mallers. He was there, and he called me one day and said, "Hey, I'm t meeting with the president here, and we're talking about implementing a Bitcoin law." And we started engaging with the government too, alongside a few other people. And I guess the rest is history. But I did propose to them to create a Bitcoin bond, and we created a structure for that, and a lot of modeling about what would happen with that type of instrument. So that could have, they're still yet to do it, but that would technically allow them to get rid of all their debt, and not be under the thumb of the IMF or any other globalist organization, because they would raise capital backed by sovereign debt and buy Bitcoin with that.
Yeah.
And by accumulating a hard asset, but having your debts denominated in a weaker asset, you can basically eliminate the debt. And I think this is a model we're very hopeful for the rest of Latin America and the developing world, because most of these countries will never pay off their debts.
Mm.
Either they're going to default and have some foreign powers come in and restructure, or they're going to have to buy Bitcoin. And the sooner they do this, the more better they will be because of the early mover advantage. So you have a portal open now, which is bringing in, $500 million a day, $500 million, possibly more, possibly $1 billion a day in the future. But this steady demand changes the entire market structure of Bitcoin. So what we'll see is a lot less volatility, um, not as many steep drawdowns, and that will beget more money coming into Bitcoin, and that will, combined with the supply demand imbalance, drive the price up. And as the price increases, because Bitcoin is a Veblen good, it is susceptible to the Veblen effect. The more expensive Bitcoin gets, the more people want it because they see it as something that they can put their savings into, much like real estate was
Mm.
back for the boomer generation. In 5 to 10 years, I don't think we'll be pricing Bitcoin in terms of other things. It'll just be things are priced in Bitcoin in terms of Satoshis, the smallest unit of Bitcoin. So when you buy a sandwich, it might cost you 5 Satoshis.
Oh, I like that idea. So a total flip over in terms of how you how you put a value on the goods that you're buying.
Yeah.
And but then just to go back, sorry, but do you think then, like obviously John McAfee famously declared that the late John McAfee, that he would eat his genitals if we didn't get to a million whatever last year, which neither happened sadly for the late John McAfee. So do you think like it would it hit those kind of crazy prices, or do you?
Yeah, it's not, those prices are not crazy. So I also have a prediction for $1 million Bitcoin
Uh-huh.
this year. And Kathy
When,
Wood
sorry,
up
this year?
this year. Kathy Wood has a prediction now, I think, for $3.8 million. But if you look at the overall legacy financial system, these are not crazy numbers. So every day, the US is $10 billion more in debt.
Yeah.
That's based off of a 1 trillion every 100 days metric. So $10 billion, you think that's crazy, but everyone just kind of goes on with their lives.
Yeah.
So $1 million Bitcoin is not crazy when you compare that to $1 billion in debt a day. That's just astronomical, but
Mm.
people seem to be okay with it. So I don't know why you cannot be not okay with $1 million Bitcoin. nobody wants to use money that they cede control of to someone else because,
Actually, not new money. I mean, if you're going to, like,
yeah,
we already do cede our control to central banks. So why would you flip it over, given the choice?
yeah, it's sort of like going to you have a country with hyperinflation and you're wheeling around barrels of cash. Maybe you'd be okay with switching to something else when you have no choice. But given that you have a choice of Bitcoin,
Mm,
it's no one's going to go to a inferior money. The freest money is always the money that wins out because money is not meant to be constrained to something physical. And this is why Bitcoin is so transformative and magical because Bitcoin has no physical form. So if you think about what money is, it is simply an abstraction layer for human trade. Like you and I can trade.
mm,
If you make something I want, I can get it from you. But maybe you don't I don't have something you want, so we just use this third thing that is money. But if you think about it, money doesn't really have a form. And the fact that we try to imbue it with a physical form is a weakness. So if we're using seashells, those seashells degrade. If we're using beads, those beads can be lost or stolen, or they can be counterfeited, and then you have physical coins that you can't verify the authenticity of, and then you have paper bills that that you can also counterfeit those, but the biggest problem is that they're printed out of thin air. So every time you bring money into the physical realm, there's a trade-off. But with Bitcoin, you don't have that trade-off because there's no physicality. There's no need to have someone make something that you peg your money to. It's a return to the origin of money. And this is why Bitcoin will win because it is so incorruptible.
Question for you. When you say it brings it to the origin of money, but was the origin of money not those beads or the spice or the salt or the...
Well, the origin of money is really trade. All those things are facilitating trade, right? But
Okay.
money,
No,
if
I'm
you
just,
think
I was
about it, you don't
curious.
like those physical forms are allowing us to scale up money, but money is a peer-to-peer thing. It
Yeah.
is one human trading value with another human. And if it's just two of us, we can keep a pretty good ledger in our heads. Like, you owe me 10 apples. I owe you a coffee, right? But when you scale it up to a village, then you start to need something else because no one can remember everything that everyone owes every other person.
Yeah.
So the need to scale is also what did in physical money and fiat money.
Mm.
But Bitcoin fixes that because now we keep our own ledger when you run your own node, and there is no physicality to that money. I think the world is going to this place where they do understand Bitcoin is a beneficial technology, not just for the environment, for balancing grids as well, and for incentivizing new energy production. And I think
Mm.
at the nation state level, we can drive that too, because we've had a lot of conversations where governments do want to reduce emissions for various targets they're aiming for. And Bitcoin is a viable method to do that exactly.